So we've established that we have issues. Scarcity requires us to make an allocation decision. And for us, our allocation decision is handled by markets and prices. And again, we sort of don't know. The market may be an actual physical place. You go to the farmer's market on Saturday morning and there's a bunch of people there who are selling you potatoes and radishes and onions. And you, the buyers, walk around, the sellers have their stuff. That's a market, okay? Lots of markets could be much more complicated. They don't actually require face-to-face interaction. But what they do have is a pricing mechanism that makes the allocation process here. These prices, which are key to us, make no mistake about it. And again, prices to an economist, they're really just a rationing device. Not something that you behold and say, well, that, firms may say, well, I like high prices, it gets me more money. That's true. Might make you more money with a high price. But to an economist, prices are just rationing devices. Prices are formed by the interaction of two parties. So immediately I have to sort of give you a little disclaimer here. I'll put this little thought bubble, the sort of bubble that pops out of the head of cartoon characters. So we're going to say that for now, no government intervention. Don't worry, the government will intervene, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to model it. We're going to figure out how and why and what happens when they do that, okay? But right now, we're simplifying the world and saying we only have really two parties here, and the two parties are buyers and sellers. Now, we're going to construct some graphs that will explain how this works, okay? And there's going to be a graph that is concerns buyers, okay? And for that, we're going to construct something called a demand curve. And we'll get to that in a minute. We're going to do the same thing by looking at sellers, only on their side, we're going to construct something called a supply curve. So these are just nothing but an ability for us to look at a graph and capture how consumers behave, to look at another graph and capture how suppliers or producers behave, okay? So let's push right into this, and we'll start with the demand side. And we're going to draw the first of what will be many two-dimensional graphs that you see in a good microeconomics course, okay? And so this graph is going to have an axis, a vertical axis, and a horizontal axis. And on the vertical axis, we're going to put price, which from now on, I'm going to abbreviate with P. Okay, so the unit on the vertical axis is dollars and cents, and across the horizontal axis, we're going to measure quantity. Okay, and we'll call that from now on Q. And this is units of the product. So it could be gallons of gasoline. It could be barrels of oil. It could be cans of beer. Whatever the product is, okay, it's some physical amount measured across this axis. It's some physical amount, and the vertical axis tells us how much you have to pay for that. And so we're going to construct a demand curve here, and this curve looks kind of like this. I'm going to call that demand. That D from now on means it's also known as the demand curve. Okay, and up on top, I want to put the formal definition for us, because we'll refer back to this. Demand says, how much will people buy at different possible prices? Before we really get into the intuition here, I want to sort of get some of the baggage out of the way. I've drawn this as a straight line. Are demand curve straight lines? Probably not. There's probably a little curvature to them. But the problem working with curves is that you have to, if you're going to solve these out, you have to remember this thing called the quadratic equation, and you have to solve all these sorts of problems, and you really don't get any mileage out of that. All I really need to know is that price and quantity vary inversely. In other words, that the curve has downward slope. When price goes up, people want to buy less. When price goes down, people want to buy more. Okay? That's all I need to know. Now, I can capture that with a straight line. I could capture it, if I wanted, by doing something like this, where I put price here and quantity here, and I could say, well, this could be a downward sloping line, Larry. And the answer is, yeah, that could be. And in fact, your demand curve for your particular industry might look kind of like this if you actually were to go to talk to the people in your information services and get some data on price and quantity and plot it out there. It might look kind of like this, okay? But for us, we're not really losing any explanatory power by putting this linear form, and it makes life a lot easier. So we've already talked about the relationship here, but let's just go through one more time. If you were to quote some original price P0, at that quoted price, what this says is that you'll sell this many units, which we'll call Q0 at that price. If the price were to go up to, say, P1, now you would see that the increase in price to P1 resulted in a reduction of quantity from Q0 to Q1. The higher price means people don't want to buy as much. Think about what we did earlier. We talked about opportunity cost. Every time you pass a green sheet of paper, you're passing away the embodied happiness that this green sheet of paper carries. This green sheet of paper, you know in your head what it's worth. You know the happiness you can get with this green sheet of paper. Now, if the price goes up, they're going to be saying, wait, we need more of those green sheets of paper. You say, wait a minute. Now I used to be willing to pay you when it was only one green sheet of paper. But now that I have to use two, I'm just giving up too much. I'm going to back out. Now, not everybody backs out. Some of these people here, there are people who would even pay more. See, this is a positive region of the demand curve. That means there's a higher price up here, and there would still be some people buying. Not as much as before. The higher price would, again, restrict quantity demanded, how much people actually buy the product. But see, there's still some people willing to pay it. This is how price does its magic of rationing. As the price floats up, in your head, you understand the opportunity cost of giving more and more of these green sheets of paper away means that you're getting less and less of all those other things that you like. And so you say, wait a minute, I'm going to back off here. Okay? So people will move away from that. Alternatively, if the price had started going down to begin with, and we went down here, the reduction in price would cause people to expand their purchases of this commodity. Once again, the logic is the same. Lowering price means you don't have to give up as many of those green sheets of paper. Before, if you had to give up one, now you only have to give up half a green sheet of paper, which, of course, you'll give the green sheet of paper, they'll give you back 2/4. But the point is, it's now worth it to more people to enter into this market. So as that price drops, all these people here who was not willing to pay P0, they say, well, yeah, I'll buy that. At that price, I'll buy that. And so, again, if the situation is such that it's not as scarce, there's a lot more supply out there, price will go down. What's happening here is that there's a lot of oil being produced, a lot more oil being produced by the United States. As this more and more of the oil comes on the market, more and more gasoline is going to come on the market, and as that more and more gasoline means it's less scarce. The fact that it's less scarce means the price will shift down now to attract more consumers to come into that product because there's a lot more of it out there. That's what scarcity, that's how prices handle this scarcity issue. That's why we had to have opportunity cost before we could even talk about that.